Namo Guru Me Namo Buddhaya Namo Dharmaya Namo Sanghaya Namo Namo Buddhaya Namo Dharmaya Namo Sanghaya Namo Guruye Namo Namo Dharma Namo Sanghaya Kande Laje Gwenje Doga Raga Shosa Bonde Chunze Cheyen Gyabo Gwenje Losan Sedan Jeba Nede Sheso Denje Nanga Sinde Bende Cheze Lama Jebe Zonga Talo Debe Sena Shin Tenpa Jeje Geja Chuso Sheje Chungwe Jabe Lodru Gyasa Nawe Jinju Leshe Tabe Beje Lame Zebe Tongde Tenbe Dende Lacha Yewo Chiye Nazo Medo Chishen Dobe Nangsen Jin Wensha Yidu Chuden Yazo Sena Xingzhuo Qela Qeba Kanxi Tongmen Dune Saba Lunga Yiso Migi Jiji Qeba Dongba Sumji Medu Ningne Jeba Zhabu Soso Ningme Dede Mande Zhola Cheje Bangben Denzhou De Gombo Jeje Labjin Zeba Daja Samba Tabe Yirang Chize Laman Damba Tena Shugui Kala Tenzin Dorjee Shida Samben Deje Sabje Cheje Chawa Abdu Namda Vese Yingle Xinba Sunju Gola Chado Minga Tame Nangmu Sugu Rada Sidi Bado Minu Denba Daso Chini Sabe Gewa Dendan Zhuwa Gunlo Hangben Dang Jewara Chizi Lo Denbe Ningbo Rindu Saje Mingme Zewe Dejen Jenres Chime Kenbe Wangbo Jangbe Tubo Mali Zhongze Sangwe Kanjin Kebe Zhujin Zonga Losan Tabe Shabla So Mime Zewe Dejen Jenres Chime Kenbe Wangbo Jangbe Yang Tubo Mali Kanjin Kebe Zhujin Zonga Losan Tabe Shabla So 明明自文的人真热是痴迷天白王波将白对我马略中在上位大行间开白如今罗上大白小所望的邦的杂位拉玛人波大所几乎若变点点就高地前边国内切磋过松头节为主制度邦的杂位拉玛人波大所宁个人变点点就了高地초다 퇴몽을 주제도 서반대 자베 라마 렘보 다소 닝거러 벤데 제조는 장조 닝베 반조 마산 점에 셔라 마르제 마제 망가 남게 오고 소소라리 이시 주요 대선예 산즈로 대타 가데 바라 바라 삼가데 모디 소하 대타 가데 바라 삼가데 모디 소하 대타 가데 바라 삼가 게레 동다 자주 시와다 메데 네베 견다 대와天宝 조시 자지 된장데 조요 사시베니 Let me remind every one of ourselves to take a moment and cultivate the highest form of motivation. We call it Bodhisattva motivation or the altruistic motivation, seeking complete enlightenment for the benefit of all other sentient beings. At least with that kind of contrived bodhicitta, altruistic motivation, we should participate in this Bodhisattva's discourse on the perfection of wisdom gone beyond. Where we left off in this text, of course, we are doing chapter 9 on the wisdom from great Bodhisattva, Mahasattva Shantideva's The Guide to Bodhisattva's Way of Life. And where when we left off is this very core concept of the matter, how emptiness, shunyata or sunyata, and dependent arising, pradit samutpat, they complement each other, right? Emptiness and dependent arising, they complement each other. So in other words, the meaning of emptiness is dependent arising, as we say, and the meaning of dependent arising is emptiness. So they complement each other.
Dahila tene nange medo dar. Dahila teme nange medo dar. Jona te meri su şöyle tabi hangi yüce nam. Dahila madebe cüsece yeva maybe sa. Yang şöyle raşinci yeva tongen. Tenjong ti tawa mede. Yena şöyle na raşin rangu ngurba. Yüce so de ba şenu gede kondi hev şeno. Tena şunam sa tene meva maybar. Tani de cümada bu günde namşa damşi. Mace bir şey mi ten dava damşi. Südülükvan joşiva da. Tide cümada bu se tenşun ki takdon seni çevana ranşi çeva düzaya. Mama baktıma ni. Pündüce gıcık şoğuz sonde. Tempak ninsakye se namşa nişiyem. Yandan rendim bani. Tenşun ki tenşun ki teni süyşevi sedos. Tongpa tenşun ki tongdu joan deyang. De kansa surunla menje. Tawa namda ngesin maşevi kansa kam. Rangi ceba semekikwe kansa chigo songde. Tendawe songo tongpa tenshun ko songdu. Drobji hena meno. Tela dendrop gobe rikwan yangda xe la tenya. Chenda rangi ceba chungse jamedu nyambe. Rikwa yangda Mindu nyamdu si deme ngeba chazang kwa kawa menje ranshi meshin ten jeje nawa mingo ba shashi tanje mashawa se tanye ge namsha sejob de jo neba di shindu kawe song kawa song Shantideva simre chöno tongpa dishe ne leden jebu tempa kang ngoza wa yende ngoza menshu wa yende menshu sheba so mangus tere kongsi sada tere kasha 동바 대중 지도 거서 쇼시 거리나 동아가 동 대중 동바도 동바 대중세 지시야고 맞아들지래요. 그래서 동바 대중 동시도 동바 대중 동시도 대다 예배를 받으시나 동바 대중 동도 해야 되라 돈이 또 사는 거 용하야 말다 대중 동배도 해야지 돈이 많다고 용거로 다른 집에 들어가가 대중은 동바 미차스니 싫어 어디서 대중 동배도 해야지 레라게 동바 대중도 해야지 가가들이 다 거지 세상 동바 대중도 해야지 저 동바도는 디슈 대중도 해야 될 기자들은 내 말이지 아니 가르쳐서 됐어다 제르부 사이에지 됐어도 근데 동일 예박하지 샤 잠지 균질 뜻서 셔도 어디서는 다 동바 대중도 샤르스고 야 다 균질 베텐질 때네 비거는 힘에 와서 될라 대중 동배도 샤르스로 대중 동배도 샤르스도 돈이 뭐도 그게 샤고 그러죠 저 동바 대중도 샤르스 돈이 도와서는 샤예 말이지 거기 가도 샤고 그래 저 동바 대중도 샤 가르스는 에 대중 동배 쇼글 동바도 하다 동바도 쇼 대중도 하듯이 무엇이 계셔들으면서 이제 말했어요. 사실 저기가서 거기 그래서 내면야 ran심에 거하고 가서 야가에나 대사지 균을 뜻서 셔시네. 지미알 비게 이제 셔셔는데 거기다 동바대는 소리 샤이죠다. 대주 동바도 샤샤이 데려와 거 표주대에 인사. 에 거기다 동바래로 그랬어. 그러이서 저기도 말씀이 돼 레라요. 대주 동바도 샤 동바대도 샤디나 동바대도 샤디 가게 있어. 어디 되지다.
So as Geshe read from the extensive commentary on this particular chapter and explaining this concept of how emptiness means dependent arising and dependent arising means emptiness. In Tibetan we call it Thongpa Tenjung Gyung Thong. The meaning of emptiness is the meaning of dependent arising and vice versa. So only when we realize emptiness, then we will be able to understand how the meaning of emptiness is how emptiness means dependent arising. You have to realize emptiness to be able to understand that. But to understand dependent arising as emptiness, we don't have to realize emptiness first. In other words, relatively speaking, it's easier to understand that the meaning of dependent arising is the meaning of emptiness. You don't have to realize emptiness first. But to be able to understand that the meaning of emptiness is the meaning of dependent arising, one has to realize emptiness, and only it comes later on. And so what does that mean? The meaning of emptiness is the meaning of dependent arising and vice versa. It's not that when you realize emptiness directly, you realize the meaning of dependent arising indirectly or vice versa. That's not the meaning of that particular statement. As Jerambuche Lama Tsongkhapa clarifies in his commentary on the middle on the fundamental wisdom called Sashidikchen, that when you really realize emptiness of intrinsic existence, that emptiness or shunyata, you develop a stronger conviction in the infallible working of law of cause and effect. right? That is the meaning of what we call the meaning of emptiness is the meaning of dependent arising. And also when we realize that cause and effect means that things are related, isn't it? Things are interdependent. If something is interdependent, then that thing cannot exist intrinsically, you know. So it is easier to understand that dependent arising is empty of intrinsic existence. But it's harder to realize that emptiness means that dependent arising. And so as Lama Tsongkhapa clarified, that it's not the case that when you understand one directly, you understand the other indirectly, right, implicitly. That's not the meaning of it. The meaning is that if we realize emptiness, that our conviction in the infallible working of law of cause and effects gets stronger, right? We believe in that more, and vice versa. So literally in Tibetan statements is that emptiness appears as dependent arising in the meaning of dependent arising, and dependent arising appears as emptiness. And so as Geshe explained, that it is much harder to realize that emptiness means dependent arising. For the emptiness to appear as a meaning of dependent arising is much harder. For that, we should have realized emptiness first. Okay? But it's easier to understand dependent arising as emptiness. That's because, remember, in our reasoning, syllogistic reasoning, we use dependent arising or pratitya samadhipath as a reason to establish something as emptiness. Right? We can say X is emptiness or empty of intrinsic reality because it is dependent arising, isn't it? So understanding dependent arising as emptiness is relatively easier, but understanding emptiness as dependent arising is much harder. And so as Geshe explained, what does that mean? Understanding emptiness as dependent arising is that as we realize emptiness, that we have deeper understanding of law of karma and outcomes, that we have a stronger conviction in the infallible working of law of karma and outcomes. So that's the meaning of that particular statement.
可是南就西亚的东华考外呢，电视都被同时的，但东西嘛写的嘛是写的是吧？写的，他这里还呢，电视都被同夸就看这些呢，我等于需要的这些这些那应该的，可见别人是没法做的，什么当人是没法的，休息么也的是，就这里呀，这说写着的。因为牙主要的，你爸爸呀，就牙主要就，我今天就听有呢，因这个的，电视东北同的下人，看东北电视同的下人说的，我到电视东北同下的，那么就让这边都是说这个，他们没电视也没些是个，就是对外人上个，因为他们要么是写是吧？我记得他电视东北同下的到。东北电视下，你看人家下个是呢，原来电视东北都是下，现在东西多少现在东北电视下过去。
So in the context of both sutras and tantras, so often that statement is repeated or cited all the time. In Tibetan says Tongpa Tenjung Gyeltsen, right? Emptiness, as meaning dependent arising, and Tenjung Tongpa dependent arising as meaning emptiness. So those statements or that statement is often cited in sutras and tantras, but then when it comes to the meaning, what does it really mean, right? And this is where we kind of struggle. And so based upon Rinpoche's, Lama Tsongkhapa's explanation in Sashi Tikchen, that commentary on the fundamental wisdom, and he explains that it is easier to understand dependent arising as emptiness. That comes first, isn't it? Because we do use dependent arising as a reason to establish something as empty of true existence or intrinsic existence, isn't it? Once you realize that, you realize emptiness through that reasoning or process, now we are able to understand that emptiness means dependent arising. And how do we know that, according to Rinpoche, is that now we have a deeper understanding of the cause and effect, that we respect the karma more. So that affects our practice of abandonment and cultivation, isn't it? Now we take it very seriously. We respect the law of karma. It really is serious matter, right? So that realization of emptiness helps us to have stronger conviction in the working of law of karma and actions. And as Geshe explained, that within the schools of thought, it is only the Prasangika Madhyamikins, Umatengyupa in Tibetan, really who could explain that emptiness means dependent arising, isn't it? When it comes to explaining dependent arising as emptiness, other Buddhist schools of thought also can do that. For example, Savatantika Madhyamikins also say that phenomena is empty of true existence because it's dependent arising, right? So dependent arising as emptiness could be explained by other Buddhist schools of thought, but emptiness as dependent arising is really kind of exclusive to, so to speak, prerogatives of, if you will, Prasangika Madhyamika school.
One day, that's did was just Jeremy Shake the Ringasirona Jesumsha.
No, so.
Because the dog when you take you about this.
No,
And thought till I tried down and said that you did have to this.
no, so.
That tell you that the route around you there was 7,000 shit in the Gaza Shazaka to Maris.
No, so.
That bed chill out of that, the Curtis and tell you at Terrace.
No, so.
She that the Curtis of John over the Dala to Maris. What this is that Pitchy Shunk, she and the pay charge in a this is the Kanje Rangon the motor of the Namja, you did send you a shot, mother was a shot or that.
No, so.
You shot the pay shot.
No,
That 카시에스는 하상 따와 넌 커서 됐어. 넌저 그게 제가 달래니 가야 매워. 케링 거리스. 하상에 더 먹고 제가 마시고 가야 매워 케링 거리스. 어떤 저 머리세 안 뭐지. 신이지요. 다다다 닝마가 신나더라. 롱저런 줘서 다 치수 닝매 개바 해주장다 좀 뭐뭐 용게 장래. 어디서 지금 다와드고네 하상 다와데. 다와 양다와 됐어 거리.
롱저 남자 봐. 롱저.
내국도서야 롱전 조도서야 누가
롱저.
디너다 내국도서야 배서죠. 디너리야 다가지.
롱전 조도서 배저 튕겨로게.
어디 롱전 조도나니 내국도서야 저.
알라라로스 롱저. 롱저.
어디 대신에 다들 하장 따와데 뭐래서 안 지나 로카말라 일에서 내제션에 저가시는 밤에 쉬우지셔라. 이 카르베 그 뭐네 그 가가요 말하시는 디가에 그 비게 뒤져서 그다 얘네 따와다는데 하장 따와도 걸 셈 주고 말이지. 디 만져서 어디 어디시 뭐네 내상으로 들어가서 그
롱저.
롱저 럼저다.
롱저. So Geshe explains that Lama Tsongkhapa or Rinpoche, in his Rimga Gyeltsen illustration of the 5 stages, right? This is a High Soka Tantric text in the footnote. Lama Tsongkhapa in that particular text says that only Prasangika Madhyamikas have really established or understood the ultimate reality, which is emptiness. So the view of emptiness or shunyata elucidated by the Prasangika Madhyamika school is the most authentic and on the dot. Okay. Now, if you are not sort of satisfied with that, you said, okay, you want to make it even finer, so to speak, more refined, then he said, you might end up becoming a nihilist. Like there's nothing more to tweak it, and then if you're trying to tweak it and make it even more refined, you will end up becoming a nihilist, But then if you don't tweak it, leave it as, you don't understand what the Prasangika has said, and you have only understood emptiness as presented by other Buddhist schools of thought, right? Even Savatandika Madhyamikan, well, you still are not able to completely refute intrinsic existence, because in other Buddhist schools of thought, they have not been able to identify precisely the object of negation or gaksha, what is being negated or refuted. So even if there is very fine viewpoint, but still there is, some intrinsicness left. It has not been refuted, isn't it? So if you want to be free of the extremes of eternalism and nihilism, you really have to follow and understand the Prasangika Madhyamika's presentation on emptiness. That's what the Lama Tsongkhapa says in his illustration of the 5 stages of the completion stage, I would say, right? Rimga Gyeltsen in Tibetan, right? Clear light illuminating the 5 stages. That's what it is. And so, I mean, in the even Tibetan Buddhist school of thought, so there are many, how should I say, different viewpoints when it comes to emptiness. And so one of the things that's often mentioned is the view of nothingness. Propounded by, we call Hoshang, right, Mahayana. This is in the 8th century, my footnote. Okay. So Hoshang said that, emptiness means nothingness. That's what it is. Okay. So then, with regard to his statement, then different explanations come. Somebody says, that our viewpoint is a little different because Hoshang said it without doing complete analysis. He's a little bit too run his mouth before the analysis kind of thing. But we also talk about nothingness, but ours is a result of deep analysis. Hoshang ran his mouth first and came, so it's not the same. We are a little different. So people claim different things. But then, some even schools thought that the Hoshang's view of nothingness is the authentic emptiness, As a matter of fact, in the Nyingma tradition of Tibetan Buddhism, right, the old school, one of the greatest masters is the Longchen Ramjamba, right? When you quote Longchen Ramjamba, like, whoa, Longchen Ramjamba, right? So Longchen Ramjamba has composed what is called the Seven Treasures, Longchen Gyeltsen. In that, there's one particular treasure that deals with Nilu, realities, a treasure on realities. So in that particular treasure, the great Nyingma master Longchen Ramjamba, right, top of the line Nyingma, he actually said that the Hoshang's nothingness is the real, emptiness. Yeah. And now, if you ask him, like, if that's the one, then why did the Tibetan king bother to invite Kamal Shila all the way from India, and we have a big Samye debate? And then we says Hoshang Mayana was defeated and kicked out. And what is that whole thing about? Why we had to, that makes no sense. And then I think the explanation he gives is that, well, at that particular historical time, Tibetans were not ready for the view of nothingness. So that's why, the Hoshang was defeated, right? Tibetan's mind was not ready, ripened for understanding that. That's their explanation or defense to that. Are you with me? So that's why when it comes to emptiness, there are many viewpoints and things like that. And so Lama Tsongkhapa, is the one as we rely upon, and so explains that emptiness means dependent arising, dependent arising means emptiness, and so that's another viewpoint. Yeah.
Well, did that Jerry Mushik that the Kawaka Yorozanate Hakdon Shiju Nishe in it, Zaki Dixon, Oma Gomorose, Lishi Yimbo, that Tresi, because Hungas is you are, but the dinner that don't you go the Unimate Dingatino, or dinner.
Lakdon Shemus Labrim Sigoroge.
La
Lakdon Shemus Labrim.
Hakdon Shiju Isigota, Labrin Shumu, the Shah,
Hakdon
Reni, Yorba,
Nigazigoro.
Nigalias. Hakdon Shiju.
So where do we find Lama Tsongkhapa or Je Rinpoche's whole presentation on emptiness and dependent rising? Right? Lama Tsongkhapa has composed many volumes and works. Where exactly we can find them? So we can find them in these treatises of Lama Tsongkhapa, what we call the special insight section of the middle Lamrim and the great Lamrim, right? That's all about emptiness, right? Presentation. Laknon Chichuni, we call it small and big special insight sections. Yeah? We can also find his explanation in the Tsashi Tikchen, as I said, that commentary on the Tsashi Tikchen, the Zawashiragi Dewarwage. Yes, so I was right. So Tsashi Tikchen commentary on the fundamental wisdom treatise, Mulya Madhyamika of Arya Nagarjuna, we can find in that. We can also find his explanation in the Uma Kongpa Rapsel, right, clarifying the middle way thought, clarifying the middle way, like Uma Kongpa Rapsel. And then we can also find in Lekshe Nyingpo the essence of eloquent explanation. So these are the treatises in which Lama Tsongkhapa, right, explains emptiness and dependent rising.
Oh, the Jeremy show some that she never got the silver stone that the Genoto that says she get of the no that Kunate bedroom, Zhang Jia, Tigunda, Judge Pawaka to do that, they say she or jet the gill without two moments to share. And Kayas and the Konas of a gill shingo to raise those you would. She was another music Mari. Jet was so shabby, Jet was Masuma, Kunzu Jet the Sia Yomar, come to Shia Kangati, Jet was Sona, you think they can so somewhere. Jet was a Sega Mingage, Jet was she today, Kajia Yomar.
So those are the original treatises of Lama Tsongkhapa, in which we can find his explanation of shunyata, emptiness, and also dependent arising. And of course, his way or system was followed by many great masters, and there are many, but among them, some of the most prominent names that we often cite are Gongtang Tenpe Treme, or the Changjia Rebe Dorjee, or Tugen Chutnima, or the Paponga, right, Rinpoche. Of course, none of them could say anything that Lama Tsongkhapa has really not said, because that would mean their own making up, right? They try to clarify, if there's need to be clarified, of what Lama Tsongkhapa said, or try to defend, right, his explanation. And of course, some people allege that, well, there are two Gelugpas. These are fundamental Gelugpas, so they are so biased. But that's not what it is. They exactly follow what the Lama Tsongkhapa explained and try to clarify the concept or try to sort of defend, right, his position. So sometimes we come across, certain people who claim to be non-sectarian. Looks like they read this and that and that and this, right? And so they said, okay, I don't really subscribe to any particular view, right? I have this assortment of views of everywhere else. He said, that's really doesn't get us anywhere. Yeah? Every school has the right to present their own assertion and viewpoint. By doing that, we cannot allege them as being biased, right? You study every school how they presented what it is, right? So that's not called being biased or anything like that.
Well, did that Jeremy that Jeremy this is the dojo, this is that don't eat it. Don't eat Jeremy, thank you. Star, he be then by the Sega don't get it. Jeremy was human. She said, this son, and Jeremy was a dojo, don't eat because of that. Can't you sing the surgery? See, do I? And that not George, you lose your that you said that you lose who said you make was and he said travel long in the said Sanji good tomorrow do your George and not here your what did you make was that the Jerry was a mother you make was that the loss do you get a steer you some dojo here no Jimata was here get at the mother Sugun Yinelia Shintra along the train Yilison Drachi Tomo Yadra with the Kajasa so what they did that Dongani go to that be Jeremy consisting the Sonji to send that hearing.
So there is a very commonly recited prayer called Kangden Shingde Suje Tsongkhapa, which means, oh Lama Tsongkhapa, you are the pioneer of the land of snow or Tibet, right? So you don't get that title easily, right? You are the pioneer. And there's reason behind that. And as Geshe explained, in the context of sutra discourses or sutra yanas, do in Tibetan, that Lama Tsongkhapa, in many of his works, as I gave it examples earlier, really clarified, as best as he could, the meaning of emptiness, isn't it? So Lama Tsongkhapa's one of the greatest contributions in the Sutrayana is explaining what emptiness means. As we said before, emptiness means dependent rising means emptiness, and so nobody before that him was able to come up with such clarity and elucidations there. And so from that point of view, we can say, Lama Tsongkhapa, you are the pioneer of the land of snow. Now, from Tantrayana point of view, Tantric discourses, Lama Tsongkhapa in his works clarified, what illusory body means, right? Jumekhu not only explained it, but he explained how can we accomplish it, realize it. Before Lama Tsongkhapa came on the scene, explained that really hardly anybody understood what illusory body means. Forget about how to accomplish it, right? The illusory body is explained more like, as we often do in the sutra context, like we talk about illusion, isn't it? Things appear to you in one way, they exist in another way. That's illusion, right? That's a sutra explanation. So even in the tantric context, others will explain the illusory body as that something appears in one way, something exists in different way. But that's, not. So nobody was able to explain how the subtlest wind energy, right, it arises as illusory body, and then when you integrate it with a clear light mind, so we have the union of illusory body and clear light, meaning clear light mind, right? That Lama Tsongkhapa really came through with so much insight and clarity. So that was one of his greatest contributions to the tantric discourses there. So from that perspective also, we can say, oh, Lama Tsongkhapa, you are the pioneer in the land of snow, Tibet, right?
Oh,
So if you want two concrete examples of Lama Tsongkhapa's greater contributions, like I would hold it in my hand, grab it, show me. Those are the two ones. Explanation of emptiness, right? The finest explanation of emptiness, right, in the Sutrayana, and explanation of illusory body and how to realize and accomplish it, right? So those are two concrete, grab by your hand kind of examples there.
Oh, there is that. That did talk about the that Jerry was more poorly as something of the Shumo. They need to come to because some Jerry in the young some Jenny shows to the witnesses on the Shayamara. For couple, the jet home the courage or the death only somewhere, Mother Jerry, witnesses coming with the Tawakon soon at the Yamara. But this was out the Cosanji get them over usually. And the Kajadi Del Baya Rimbaria, Shipjashan, Jeremy's mother, Sumaris, Titan also, Hakuata.
So then one of the questions that people do bring up is, oh, do you mean that before Lama Tsongkhapa came on the scene, nobody became Buddha at all, right? So it's only after Lama Tsongkhapa came, then people started to realize that. But that's not the point, Even if many could become Buddhas, it doesn't mean, right? Buddhas can teach whatever they want. Buddha cannot simply teach the realities as they are because they want to, right? It's very contextual dependent one. They have to take into account circumstances, time, context, who they are dealing with, their mental dispositions and level, right? So in accordance with that, Buddha have to explain, not like I'm a Buddha and I'll tell you everything, right? That doesn't work, So we are not saying that before Rinpoche there were no other Buddhas. Okay, then he became Buddha, yes. But when it comes to presentation, explanation, everything, yes, before Lama Tsongkhapa nobody did that. Okay, so Lama Tsongkhapa explained those two things really at the finest, deepest level.
What is that? The karma major does couldn't see what take out the tumble. Because the deal Jerry was a garbage of the Javis. Because they million, they tell you that because Jugung goes now may choose a gunju say, because you Jabba song and Dawati, what the Jeremy said, the Sweber does Tedeshe in a young that. Oman Juben Javajo, Tina in the Karza. Don't you thought on in the Lindeli, give us your doors. What did a song or see? So that Jeremy was a song.
No, so.
So that don't you do some living, you have to do, share do see that Jeremy mother, baby, sort of that. Come out this song yours and get Pesha Thomas that.
I love much good event. That's a general Jeremy shooting.
Jeremy said, let do a pudo.
Also.
Jeremy was just Jeremy do a penny. They take Mambo, do about Mambo, or this is not that. See, or did the Oman Juven Joanna did a lazy Yeva Sher Dugo, say, song or is that a deacon. Sanjay Yama Sunjo no Sundo.
Also.
Sanjay name.
Also. So another example I want to give is one of the great Karmapas in the Karmapa lineage called Karmapa Dorjee, right? Akshubhya Vajra Karmapa, right? And in the early part of his life, he really critiqued Lama Tsongkhapa's, explanation of emptiness, right? He was an opponent, right? He criticized. Then later he realized his own mistake, and then he wrote an apologia for Lama Tsongkhapa, said, I make a terrible mistake here, so please forgive me. So he really admired Lama Tsongkhapa's presentation of emptiness. And I myself have not read that, but I think Karmapa Dorjee Akshubhya Vajra Karmapa wrote a commentary on the middle way, Umajukwe Delba. So in that, he said that if you realize emptiness, your conviction in the law of karma and action will become stronger. So that's his influence from Lama Tsongkhapa, right? Because Lama Tsongkhapa is the first one who said it, So Geshe said, I did not read that commentary yet, but one of the Kagyupa prominent masters this day called Sangye Nyeba Rinpoche, So he explained that. He said how Karmapa Dorjee apologized to Lama Tsongkhapa, just a footnote. And I remember reading the whole apology, right? I found that Tibetan text because I was a curious George. So it was wonderful, right? So it exists.
Oh, this is that don't share says the door that. So the name card of shows that the two miles live.
No, so.
The tenure that there's no Shantideva, tenure schedule show that.
No, so.
She mother don't about then to reading ever niggers in the page of them of the Yamara.
No,
10 years old in Laura.
no.
So that the 10 years schedule says this and that is sort of statue is.
So what I want to say is that, it's the Prasangika Madhyamika's kind of exclusive explanation that emptiness means dependent arising. Okay, everybody else is able to explain Buddhist schools of thought that dependent arising could mean empty of true existence or something, right? But none of them were able to explain that emptiness means dependent arising. What that really means is that, as we use dependent arising as a reasoning, X is empty of intrinsic existence because it's independent arising. Same way, Prasangika said, everything is possible because of emptiness, isn't it? Because everything is empty, so everything changes. All this variety, phenomena, everything is happening. Different causes can produce different results. It's not like, one cause can produce all kinds of results, isn't it? Because everything's empty, that's possible. So that's how the Prasangikas are able to explain it, so that is, we can say, a unique feature of Prasangika school of thought.
Oh, they said that they don't about the shots that the lumps of your days you about the did she to go the country. Then don't about the shot, they don't you do something you may say. Then they don't about the shot, you don't you must on your.
So once again, so summarize that, because of dependent arising, things are empty of intrinsic existence, right? That comes first. Some other schools of Buddhist thought agree with that, right? Sevatantrika Madhyamika will agree with that. Because everything is dependent arising, everything is empty of true existence, they will agree. But because everything's emptiness, right? So everything is dependent arising, sort of thing. That only comes later. Well, when you realize emptiness, then you will be able to experience that.
먼저 랑전함수 나시가 말해. 샤 동배 메다셀시아지. 나와 유다세세 대요시시오라. 세다 강가리아 나와 유다세 동배 메다스 가샤데 나와 유다스 메다세 동배 유다세오라디. 다 대조로들 그 나와기 동배가 메다세아죠라. 그래서 동배 메다케어시도는 롱신 뭐저버 인자 이제 줄레랑도 가가 돼야될 가르스거다. 동배 메다세스거다. 다 현대에서는 그 주제되는도 레고 저도 저도 대중이 저거 동화래로도 저기 저거就是대중 동배도도 샤디 로지바가 세워디. 다 동배 대중도 샤디 다다 태조 셰조 어디 시오로 세다 람선도는 시행나가 동배就是저 수시는 당시 따여서 민주로 세워줘라. 그때 저 지시도 세다 돈이 가서 그나 아데 렌젤베 뜻고 셔도 셔베 라렌 따라디 사버도 두고나 어디 따도 되래서 다 가지고 동보 땡서도 샤 따도 되야서.
So as Lama Tsongkhapa very clearly stated in his three principal paths, Lamchen Namsum, right? Shen Nawe Yuta Sevatang. You know, moreover, that appearance eliminates the extreme of eternalism. Tongbe meta session, emptiness eliminates the extreme of nihilism. If you understand how those two things are kind of connected as cause and effect, your mind will not be, stolen by any distorted views, right? I'm very loosely translating here, right on the spot. So that is really the Prasangika Madhyamika standpoint, okay? Because you see, nobody is able to kind of explain how emptiness eliminates the extreme of nihilism, right? Because many things, like emptiness means nothingness, so nothing exists. That's the problem, right? But here, Prasangika is saying, because things are empty of existence, therefore they exist, they could function as they do, isn't it? And because things appear, right? So that means they are, that eliminates the extreme of eternalism. That means things are not intrinsically existent. Right? So those statements in the three principal paths really represents the Prasangika Madhyamika's unique standpoint, and Lama Tsongkhapa explains that to us. As Geshe said before, but realizing emptiness, if we develop more conviction in the law of karma and actions, and then we are taking more seriously following the law of karma in terms of abandonment, abandoning negativities and adopting positive action. So that means, right, we understand the meaning of emptiness as dependent arising, isn't it? That comes, of course, after realization of emptiness.
What is your Karsa? Toda Hiki Tua, the Gunda Yimu Tua Sajiro, what is your Tombote, Tonto, so you live, you should have taken Tidishi order.
No, so. So there are many aphorisms, kind of spiritual in Tibetan, Buddhism. We often talk about, like we say, Thirda Shantideva. The indicative sign of having listened to teaching or discourses well is that you are very disciplined and subdued, isn't it? The indicator of doing a really good meditation, that means the delusion seems to be weak in you. Right? If delusions are weakened in your mind, then meditation is working, isn't it? And if you are behaving very peacefully, then listening to teaching is working, right? So like that, as we said, that because of dependent arising, things are empty of intrinsic existence. That's Prasangika, other some schools of Buddhist thought understand. Because things are empty, right? And so that's why everything is possible, right? So that is really exclusive to the Prasangika school.
어디 다 주마세한테 뭐 때문에 주마세한테는 수요하고 유제소 수요하고 주마세로 다 그런 데에 각각 소개지가 메저된 것이 롱중세하죠 말이에요. 어디 계셔라. 그래서 이 주마세 때문에 집어셔라. 지금 때는 돈에 팔을 된 소리 용서 어떻게 하고 또 좀자니 매다 인디라시 줘요 말이야지. 유제 들으시고 다들이야. 이 대중 동배토도 샤다 동배 대중이야 니나네 이 대중 동배토 샤데 가서 강가 더 저런지부터 누가 봐. 더 동배 대중도 샤세디 tenjo 체중 주시.
So sometimes the word choma means something artificially created or something created or creation is also used together with dependent arising. You know, dependent arising means causes and conditions do create, right? That's the terminology being used. So once again, Geshe restates that, you know, using dependent arising as a logic or reasoning to establish and understand something as emptiness, that is nothing exclusive to the Pasangika schools of thought. But understanding that emptiness, because everything is emptiness, all this variety is possible and function, that is exclusive to the Pasangika school of thought. And that only comes after realizing emptiness.
What did Karsa? Tina Chuno said, then Meva Maiba, Tanya Yamatabu, Junde Naya Taji, She Majibi, Himur, then the Tava Sanji, Sudu Libera, Goshebata, Today Yamatabu said, then you could talk on Sene, Jevana. Raji Java Duzaya Mamiba Toani Pinzu Jig Chos Jig Soma de Demba Ninja Jesha Namshala Nishi Yan Da Ren Bade Tenzung the Tini Tsuhebi Sedosa. What did Kajida Demba Jijo Jig Soma said Tondo Demba Shao any Raji Java Shao design, Majava Shao design, and Juneka Mashavshe, Junesha Raji Java Mashavshe, Tanyas of the Judicial, and the Koyichi on Yama Shasona, and it Takashi Tensu Tomba to the Shah, the Tomba Tensu, Nicotina, Sangora, or this is.
So as Geshe read about is that, you know, if we can understand the complementarity between emptiness dependent arising, right, then we are really understanding what we call this relationship between dependent arising and emptiness. So in other words, if we establish you know, anything as empty of intrinsic existence, right, that does not mean that thing does not exist at all, right? It's not invalidating the existence of anything there. But if we say things do exist and function, that does not mean that they do exist and function intrinsically, right? So we can understand, you know, how emptiness and the conventional reality, these two truths, they coexist, right? They complement each other. They do not cancel each other, you know. That's important.
Oh, this God, don't but then you do the shower, draw this. Kansa Suru main case. Tawa Namda Yesin la Majeba, Kansa come. Rangi Juba Seme Kickway, Kansa, Sigwe Sung de, Tenda Longorla, Tomba Tinju told you, Joji, Hela man was it. Oh, did I get her? Dagushari. Kansa Tomba Tinju told the Shala in Tony Dor, Sarah. Don't you do Sanga de Sigmund? Don't you mother del Shag Marisori? Don't but this was a Shartse. But don't you do Sanko Yonga in the Shinning ever share do the Telaya, Tomba Dingo, Selma, a consumer Manzun, Tomba Dingo, Tom Shas, Maris. Don't you know what some Tomba Dingo to the Shas, what did it?
So this is basically, as Crystal explained already a few times, that for emptiness to understand or appear as dependent arising, one has to realize emptiness first, right? So what it means is, as we said, Lama Tsongkhapa, that we develop more conviction in the working of law of cause and effects. So if you have not realized emptiness, then emptiness as dependent arising is not going to happen for us, is it? Only after realizing emptiness, then we could experience that, because in our mind we have validly refuted the intrinsic existence.
Mashua, Tanya did not yet time settled John, the Shindu Gawa songs. What did that conjure? Tomba Densu, you are the Densu Tomba, you are Sukara Sena, and Densu Tomba doesn't have because the Tomba Densu doesn't have the car you're racing with that. And the Densu Tomba doesn't have the car, Maris. But that is the car is the Nadian of Song to the race. Because the Redua, Shanju Simrele, Gobol to Goroa, Tondo Shanju Simrele, the Roa. Children don't by the Shane, led the Dibi Deba Kang, Mother Wagon, Dingwater, Menju Wagon, Dimension, she was so Mang was. That Tomba Densu told the Shartse, and she will have what is it. And surely I'm not sure if there was there.
So what we have talked about earlier is a really crux of the matter. It's very important. So it has been kind of explained, repeated in some sense in the commentary, which is how emptiness appears as dependent arising. And because that is the challenge, isn't it? That by realizing emptiness, how can we establish or ascertain the validity of conventional reality? That is the hard. Many people fail to do that, right? So by realizing emptiness, if we can still ascertain the validity of conventional reality, then we see the two truths, they sing together, so to speak. So that's the important crux of the matter. And great Arya Nagarjuna in his commentary on the ultimate bodhicitta called Changju Semtel, commentary on bodhicitta. This is the ultimate bodhicitta. He said, the fact that emptiness can arise as dependent arising is just incredibly amazing thing. That's what he said. Among all kinds of wonders, he said, this is the most wonderful thing, how emptiness can appear as dependent arising.
What did that is? Don't put this on Shantideva. Nippon the Kansa so Kamba song this and Dilla. Kang say, sure the Kansa, Kanaruma the Migne. The bird true, you're the Meche. Number Jeva Sheva ye, Namju Shera Jenny, Rajima Jeva Sheva 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 no. This is number 2 King Law Rani Jeshati Konso Medo Bay. Then number 2 King Shenji Ranshi Meva Chego Sumigu. Gona Namju Nama Jungi Namju Shima Dea Namju Shenji Demi the Jego Shedna. Jushi took me, but took one July. Because Geshe Phuntsok Gyeltsen Songbi Shedda. Namju Rani, they made the same Kangi Jang Madra, but 太中太切入些呢，连的这时候的，可是最晚是他南京是上，全他是电话中午的这个阶段上呢，同步接着把工作是现在节目都，就是老可能没些节目需要嘛这是，这是没人的，就现在这里澎湃这是电力泡澡上呢，杨可能澎湃那边的老可能要把那边电力泡过去，杨就杨可能，这个杨大杨现在搞这边是，这那小人看这个这这过呢，说他要么是吧，这介绍嘛是吧？我现在是我的时候的。
I think what Geshe read there a little bit and start explain, I think pertains to stanzas 109. So anyway, we are I think on page 167 of this translation by Stephen Batchelor's there. So as Geshe explained more, things will become clearer there. So the question that's being asked is that if first we establish how a particular phenomenon or object as being empty of intrinsic reality, let's say it's a vase, right? And so now do we need to establish that the perception of the vase is also empty of intrinsic reality? So does that mean that with every phenomenon we have to end up establishing how that's empty? If that means that's like a endless job. Phenomena are just endless, and who can do that, right? Every phenomenon you establish emptiness, right? Is that something we need to do, right? That's the question, right? Yeah.
我这东西我是看下，这不是考我是第一道，第我第一东西的，里面主要了，确实他们做啥呢？因为确实他刚刚那样是把这这的做嘛是的，是把这样把个开呢。So the
response to that question is, as Geshe cited from his memory, that's this particular stanza which says that if you see the ultimate reality of one phenomenon, right, that ultimate reality is the same with all other phenomena. So in other words, our answer to that question is, through valid reasoning, we establish like a particular phenomenon as emptiness, then by using the same reasoning, or at least focusing our mind on any other phenomena, we can understand that other phenomena is empty. So we don't have to labor to establish everyone as emptiness. We don't have to do that, right? Just one good reasoning helps us to establish emptiness of one phenomenon. That helps us to understand the emptiness of all others.
我他的练的电视，现在练的学他的对面的就是也什么的了，人家对面的就是也什么先没过的，这不是学现但是对面的，那不这位，这不是呢，对面的什么也不呢，对面的中间也那么就人家来的，来呀对面的这个项目，电学生电中间，那么看呀，对面到位，老的人当啦，人当没有啊，特色的，没得话没有啊，特色，第我小就业吧，明白写的，他学他是对面的，前面多些吧，满人白，老的学的，去看了呀，每年是。电把车不马车，娘子身边，老姐们他，电把没多，娘被车把叫就啦。这学他是电把没讲，就给就了，就电把没讲，就应该有老人家，你电把车吧。太多年白些，电子工大，我就叫呢，什么我们电多少白些，这这边就写了，电着弄我电学生电着去，那么看也没为，现在刚才电着的， Kaba Demi Niga Yanaka Dindokata, Gosi, Jilo Niga, Ranshi Megete, Jude Shimatapati, Teta Ranshi Mejawa, Tea, Ranshi Yangan Deva, Ti, Tosi Komber Shena, Lubutri Yang Topa Yang Jodo. Mikesheva, Jersey, Julo Roni, Dembatro Jabe, Denzi Mejawa, She Yang Romo. Jersey, She Gona, Tommy Joa, Denzi Gunda, Maluva, Jew, Kakuda Maluva, Jew, John Wona, John Wona, Casa. Juji Lama Guni to me, Joada. Then you could not Lama liver, John, the Miriba songs. Or the Digumar, the church, you church, Pomado, that Tambo Carto, and they may toss it. And the next church, Kazu, you the show, and Gamma Ribat or Yamdo, called Demir, Gong, Yera Motor, Kota, the Yandoya, Demir, Ribat saying, the Dogo Maris. Sure, Zimba, Dinzigunda, the San Jessica Maris, sure, Carton, Jimata, which are a charm, and tell ya, young children, Dimitri, rewarded saying, Tilashigama, someone to dance, Tagaran, Dinziga, King do this. Say that to me, do my church, the made outside, and the country dog Maris. And that Shirapaso in the Metabas Donna. Go without Donna, young Puma without the revive here, that go down. But didn't you go, Marisol?
Tinjikunda the guard was or get it.
No, Dinzigunda, that called Gunda, the Nika, the Lady, the Wonga, the Dero, Gunda, young Marisol.
So as Geshe explained, that once we understand or the Tibetan word thought can be understood and realized, so we have to keep both in mind. Okay, I don't know which meaning is coming out here. Often we analyze a phenomenon object, right? Usually we look at a phenomenon object, analyze whether it exists truly or not, whether it's emptiness. We really don't look at the mind, whether it's empty or not. First we look at the object. Once the object is established as empty of emptiness, realize that, then by the same reasoning, we can also understand that the subjective mind is also empty, or any other phenomenon we can focus on empty. We don't have to restart the whole analysis and reinvent the wheel, right? That's the response, the explanation Geshe has given. And so by realizing emptiness of, for example, a vase or a pot, pumbaa, right? By using the same reasoning or bringing that reasoning to the mind, we focus on any other phenomenon, we can understand the emptiness of that phenomenon. So that understanding can cease what we call the intellectually developed grasping at intrinsic existence, not the innate one, intellectual, right? The more intellectual part, right? That more Kunda in Tibetan, the imputed one, right? But that's not the case like with, for example, impermanence. If we understand the impermanence of a vase, then we have to, right, it's not like by the same reason we can understand the impermanence of a pillar. Okay.
The Demisia Seshamus Ganga, Sushi was Gaja Korjigara. That the Kawasa Pumasa, the Shira was the Shikora Moon Damage user, and someone only a Cheso like Damage Yungura. The Devs shows your daughter at Yonto.
As I asked, right, maybe for my own sake, why is that? Because when it comes to emptiness, right, the emptiness is the same with any phenomenon. Right, there's no qualitative difference in emptiness of this and that. So by using a valid reasoning, if we understand the emptiness of one phenomenon, by the power of that reasoning, we understand emptiness of all others, because emptiness is emptiness, isn't it?
But that's not the case with understanding impermanence. If you understand the impermanence of a pot, by the same reason, we cannot understand the emptiness of, not necessarily understand emptiness of a pillar. I said, why is that? Because pot and pillar are different objects, isn't it? They may have different structure, different other elements, we don't know, right? So there's a variety, right? That's why they're not, objects are not the same. That's why. Okay.
Sumba kange taraso kangba nishu tense nguma kange tanda tonda shiba dinyi denba deme te chejage chubde dota bazam du seje denba chuba dinyi shindu denba chuba dinyi shindu joga nede Chuji rigba yang da amazing. Nuji ji rigba go mo yi shero. Sumba ni kede kang tar no so ko ba hi des. Ngoma ko da ti ngoma de ju de rashi chuba ina. Intel nuji mo do ste ba hi ai zero de sha. Kang da ngoma ti de da tel sholoka 자 책이기도 뭐뭐 거기도 돈도 시바디니 내버려도 근데 세자고 주저도다 좀 세지 이거 주저도다 미도다 고니즈를 요 말이시오로
로게
내버려봐야 돼 주다 뭐도 소소 조다 시기를 뭐 추코는 요 말이시오로 어디서 세제세 Debatava Hindu Joka Nede, Juji Rigwayanda Meji, Nuji Rigogomodi Vishu. That is Gizakarasa, Debatava Gibig pet with your maris. And Demi pet yoris. What is it? Debatava dear, Debatava pet yours, Jidin Tayo Marwa. Dema yomaris, Yuma music is your tire. She said, Dema may pet the tire with the drug passage, you can go yomaris, just pay me in the end of Tomoko, the end of Jusat of the Ramaris.
So, as Krishna explained, of course, we know that the realist, they believe in true existence of things, right? But from Prasangika standpoint, true existence, intrinsic existence, all of these things are fabrications, right? Labeled onto phenomena. Nothing really objectively exists truly or intrinsically. It's all fabricated qualities put out on the stuff, right? That's what the Prasangikas are saying. It's your fabricated thing. Really, in reality, there is nothing that exists truly or intrinsically. And as part of that, they said, you cannot give me one good example of something that exists, that is truly existent. Whereas, we can give the example of something that does not exist truly, that's not truly existent, right? So if you cannot find one example of true existence, then how can, right, you talk about true existence at all, right? There's nothing basis, right?
What is it? Because maybe share, maybe go to my share also. Tell a kid, go more, not do make shibas of never ye. No, you will tell a kid, go more, not. You be say only Suzo told to Denver trouble Shena. Ona Mishi so dentro de Yova Yela Jushi Jardin Sama Shishi. She made it. She was Sama Shinji Rina to me the Jola around Metapatense Michelle. She is a yana. Jabdin is so much she was one the Shiza, the Shiza, the Mosu to Trova de di angli mikiso demato usenen one shija dendo yoba la Gyeltsen chiyojena ngar dar hibe angli so hena na tede thonda shiba niga penju tebe ang yoba joba yeji jodu tar songes thoshi niga yangne demba meba jode ringdonda paru tsuru sheno tedar yang 자시에 랑시타니 주메다 신의 메와이 셰랑시미 랑시니 유진을 줘봐 많이신 신의 메라 신의 등 주메 랑시 이제니 땡땡이 쉐베스 딩이 시직이 땡이 메롱에 때 주마주등 되바든 모두 되바 메바 난 편지 빠드니 응게 입이 싫어서 어디 다데 그래서 세마 잡대 예바식도 다다 벤데 수조 대와 유제 카르스니 시바 대마트 거스 다 시바 대마서 시바 코란데 유르도 시바 샤고 뭐 이제 유르 모두 시바 야마리 코란이 편지도 좀 레스 그래서 다 시바 대마 유제를 유샤는 디펜도 말이지 고 잡대 세마 야마리스 in the Demelia Javde Samayaris, Pet the Kakayaris, Yada de Chronodelia, the Shiva Demotrovaris, the Lavas of Remoto, Javde, Ribashada means the Pedo Maris, or this is it.
So we are on page 168, and what Geshe explained, or is explaining, pertains to stanzas 111 and 112 there. Realist position and then refuting it. And so now if Prasangikas asked the realist, okay, so give me a reason for asserting that things are truly existent, right? So they said, yeah, forms truly exist because perceptions of the forms truly exist. That's what I was saying. Yeah? But then you ask, now give me a reason that the perceptions of the forms truly exist. Now you really don't have any good reason to do that. Now you go back to the object, like, because forms truly exist, right? So you don't have a valid backup or reasoning to support your contentions. In the Mulya Madhyamika or fundamental wisdom, so the intrinsic reality is kind of defined as something that is not created and dependent on anything else. Something that's not created means not created by causes and conditions, right? Something that's not dependent means that does not have to rely on anything else at all. Okay? So intrinsic reality means that it can stand by itself on its own, not being created by causes and conditions and not depending upon anything else at all. But such a thing doesn't exist. It's just a concept. It doesn't really, nothing exists like that, you know. So we will stop there today and welcome your questions. We first go back to our invisible Dharma friends in the cyberspace, and then we'll come back here. No? Okay. So we have a traveling mic somewhere. Okay. Would you mind getting up and bring it if anybody has any questions? Any questions? Anybody would like to start it off?
So if I understood correctly, towards the very end, Geshe said that by realizing the emptiness of the object, of the object of perception, we're talking about how to realize also the emptiness of the mind, that it's not necessary to. But anyway, so by realizing the emptiness of the object of the intellectual grasping at true existence is ceased. Okay. Now, And so the conception of true existence of the perceiving mind will not longer occur. That was the explanation. As a result of the grasping, the conception of true existence of the perceiving mind will no longer occur as a result of having ceased the intellectual grasping of true existence.
Okay.
Okay. Now, but here we're in the context of inferential realization of emptiness. And the acquired grasping or intellectual grasping and its cease are abandoned only on the path of seeing. So instead of saying that the acquired grasping or intellectual grasping of true existence cease, isn't it more correct to say that manifest conception of true existence is ceased?
Oh, I see. So the acquired or the intellectual one, you said cease on the path of seeing. Is that what you
No, he didn't say that.
mean?
Geshe said that, but if I remember correctly,
Oh, I
realizing
see.
the emptiness of the object
Yes.
of perception
Yes.
ceases the intellectual grasping of true existence. Okay, but here we're in the context of inferential realization. So the intellectual grasping is not ceased, or it ceased, or it cedes. They're ceased only on the path of seeing. So instead of saying that the intellectual grasping is ceased, isn't it proper to say that manifest conception of true existence is ceased?
Okay.
So that we're not even the conception of the mind, perceiving mind, truly exists will not arise. But that doesn't mean it's not the same as having ceased the intellectual grasping of true existence.
Okay. I understood your question.
All right.
Yeah. Kora condition they did again. That the karsa ure. Chik tong bani to baka kuin to chik ta bani to chla she bage.
나
Ta kan je pena phumba ro ji ten le ya ane ten de ta ine de ta yang da chi ki tong bani to bani na ro bage. Ti ki ta cheba la ten se karsa ure pena phumba jimbe da jimbe to ba ki tong bani de ro bage. To ne ngan de la ro bage ta ki jimba kuin da ro bage. Jimba kuin da di ga ro la ro bage.
어디
so the Quran go di chwa tang do ge jimba kunda la di karso or pigi pena ngajen thonglam gi ne ka ba ro ge ka gi mer sta ka del jimba se di chita nganzo tembar jimba chi ro ge
어디
kalma do di the ngunjur ngunjur tembar jimba di ga war sla ma do ji gi temba jimba kunda la di ka ga me ro khande this says na go so ge jimba kunda la di pena thonglam la ga gi na ro ge that the consensus to what again
지금 군다세야지 가서 온주로
제가 군다 문주 봐도 건네 봐 잠에 군다 봐 배도 거나 맵서 그게 가버
군다 대 온주 지금 말해서
문주 지금 말 제가 군다 고 발 녀들
다 지도다 군다 지금 말해서는 되게
지금 말해서
다 온주 쟤는 온주 지고 그러
알레
그다 렌제 자요 뭐 그래 자요 뭐
제가 군다 거라 배도 빵 버려 봐
군다 빵요 말이야 그 네바도 좀 어디 건건도 놓으디요 다
원래 다 가제 그 문도 주고 말 발은 녀버서 대대고 그러게
다
빵매나
그래서 그 사고도 빵요 말아
알레
뭐 그러고 요요 말
어쨌든 제가 군다 디 통랑 내가 빵게 말게
라
제가 군다 디 통랑 내가 빵게
뭐 통도 뭐
알레 다 통반 이제 단대
통은 맞아 버데 방도 동이 또 와서 방도 말아
그래 맞아 동이 또 와서 그 제가 군다 가게 왜
군다 온줄 지금 말이서 빵데 방
단단 되게 동이 또 와서 되는 무슨 또 와서 그러지 나 동이 또 와서 그렇지 그래
지도 동이 또 와서 이제 지금 군다 온줄 자요 말
알레론서 어디 살아 되는 또 봐
빵도요 말 마야 가디 방에서는 통놈이 제 방그래서
알레론서 알레 because I'm trying to understand right the whole the Tibetan words are sometimes so rich at different meanings. I don't know which one Geshe is thinking about when we said understanding emptiness. What Geshe says is that yes, in a sense we can say the manifest. There's so much technicality involved here. That's why he's getting into all the technicalities. So I just have to say which one I'm saying. The manifest, we can say, form of intellectual grasping ceases because the real intellectual grasping, right, that stops is on the path of seeing, right? So the manifest form, even if you realize emptiness, I think Geshe says not necessarily directly, that's on the path of seeing, but understanding of emptiness, let's say conceptually, so that can seize the manifest form of grasping that true existence. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yes, it does. But can we say now these are two different things: manifest grasping at true existence,
Yes.
and manifest grasping at the intellectual, a manifest appearance of intellectual grasping of true existence.
Right.
So there's no need to say intellectual, do we?
Sorry, yeah, that's right. Yeah, he said, yeah, no. What he meant is that the manifest form of intellectual grasping will cease, and what it will completely go away on the path of seeing. Right.
Now, what level of realization is necessary in order to understand that the meaning of emptiness is dependent on arising, the third step? What level of understanding of emptiness is necessary? Will inferential realization suffice?
Okay.
If we get that,
Okay.
will we understand the meaning of emptiness as dependent on arising?
Right.
Which is the unique position of the Prasangika.
Right. So your question is.
So the question is: do we need direct realization of emptiness in order to realize that the meaning of emptiness is dependent on arising, or will inferential realization
It's good enough,
suffice?
actually.
Yes.
Sure. Thank you. Kurang kandi niba shwe de direge ta tagi kasa tongba tenjung ge tön da tenju tongbe tön sumbarwa ge. Tenju tongbe tön de da to lela ge sumbarwa ge no thangbo de wa. Ta tongba tenju ge tön de ta tenju ge tumo maim je tongyi to na ma shung ma la barwa ge. Ta di ka tongyi to se di ngusum de to na wa. En tongba tenju ge tön sha ge se go bare yana ni cheba ge to ne tongba tenju ge tön sha ge se go ka no. Jabashan di go. Yeah, Geshe says, yeah, that can be inferential understanding of emptiness, right? That it is possible that the dependent arising can appear, emptiness can appear as dependent arising at inferential level as well. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
Yeah. That would be achieved by somebody even before the path, entering the path, or at the latest on the path of accumulation, right?
He said, yeah, even before the path of accumulation, that can happen. Right? Path of accumulation is the path starting, right? Even before that, it can happen.
Since Geshe talked about Tantra, but there is a statement from Tantra that everything is manifestation of bliss and emptiness. Is this along the lines of that, the meaning, is this the same meaning as emptiness? The meaning, emptiness is the meaning of dependent arising? There is a state,
yes.
Everything is a manifestation of bliss and emptiness.
Yes.
Right, all phenomena.
Right.
So is this, can we say it in the context of sutra, would that statement read like everything is manifestation of emptiness?
Right. Oh, can we say that?
Yes,
okay.
and if we can say that, is this along the same line as this realization of the meaning of emptiness being dependent arising, the third level?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. The Kasarking, the law the Devachur Wagen, the Jude called the Deva Dinal D. Sarwagen, as a Namju that the Nanal Tunguaka, and it's Tamja or Tedong Robert said Wagen. Tedong number said he Tanganzo Dojo on the Java in that wagon. Tamja or Tombani Robert Wagen. Lamnata Holland to go rest of Wagen. Tamja Tombani Robert in half Cosona, Rovage. And Tomba Tenjung with Tula, Hakudu or Kajua. Tombani Robaima, Tona. Any Tomba Tenjung with Tula Shartse in a minute. Yanani Karoda.
Tongba Tenjung Shala, this don't you talk? Don't you talk, Tani? And this is that. Tongba Yinza. Any Jujan, Judena had seen it to us. That corridor, you told Judena had taken to us. What the Tomba Tenzu to the Shartse, this or that.
But did the skin that in the Tamja Tongbe Robert said, they'll tell you talk over.
Don't be robust, that don't you talk, San me, because some of the dance over me. Tony don't know to die, they don't you talk, San me, liver.
I'll get on at that Tomba Tenju don't share to go.
That's also in the Shine, young Josie. Don't you talk that long, somebody don't share my dance.
So what Geshe wants to say is that, yes, of course, in the context of Tantra, right, we said that things are manifestations of the non-dual bliss and emptiness, but in the Sutra and just context, we can say, yes, these are the manifestations of emptiness. But I asked, that means that if to be able to understand, or right, do we have to realize emptiness, right? He said, yes, but then once we realize emptiness, it doesn't mean then right away we can understand emptiness as dependent arising. You still have to think a little bit, right? Then it can't happen, right? It's not like as soon as we understand emptiness, then we understand the emptiness as dependent arising. So it requires a little bit more, I think, contemplation or thinking. Yeah. Any other questions we have? Do we have questions online? Oh, Carlos, you have questions? Yeah.
Thank you, Geshe. So I had a question. I was trying to see if we can get a background about the realist position.
Yes.
Because it sounds like, I don't know, they seem to be still very stuck, right, on this things being intrinsically existent.
Right, everything.
Right. So, but the argument was like it's not so much about the object, but the perception. And I'm trying to understand why. I mean, even that can be argued, I guess, by the Prasangika, Anyamika. But I'm just trying to see why they're still stuck on that. Like in terms of things being intrinsically existent, even from even from a perception.
Oh, so why, as a realist, or why we are stuck with, perception of things as intrinsically existent, both objective and subjective? Is that what
correct?
You're saying?
Yeah.
Why, right?
Right. Why? I mean, why is that? Because I mean, the arguments seem, at least from the Prasangika, at least from my view, I mean, it's just like they seem pretty convincing, right? Things definitely.
You mean the Prasangika's arguments convincing?
Right.
Okay,
Right.
sure.
So.
Kurang di sigur ganti shwe digen ta tanda ngwe ma be chene ro wage ane sugla sawa samla lo temba du ko rasla ro wage ane de ma she ta di su to be shewa dige temba du de la ro wage nan tanda di thenju ba ge del ya da gapa ja yin de kala de gapa de mane do sen tanda kuju ivers tu ro wage de yin ba re de ane ngwe ma wa ta nga ra se de de ro wage shwe dam che ane ji temba du ba da ranshin du ba ro wage 유대 유전이가 템버도 진행에 가르치는 단다 될 가대요. 그래서 데 진되는 게. 유대 유전이가 템버 진대 도 진대요. 봐. 어디 가르치는 것도 디날 가대요. 그래서 게.
예. 진짜 동의도 뭐서 어디 가서.
No. Yeah. So that really shows that we have not yet realized the ultimate nature of reality, emptiness. That's why we are stuck. Right, and they are stuck and we are stuck, right? That we think both object and subject are intrinsically existent or truly existent. Although all the arguments make sense, the Prasangikas, but we are still stuck because we have not yet realized the emptiness. That makes sense. Yeah.
동의도 제가 지고 싶은 동의도 도요 말봐. 처음 소사하고 저도.
But one thing is I would like to add is that yes, as much as analytical meditation, analysis is very important for understanding emptiness, but that alone is not enough. We also talk about the need to accumulate a lot of merit, right, to back it up, right? Just simply doing investigation, analysis, is not adequate to understand emptiness.
Yeah, I just think it just sounds like the position of these, the realists. I mean, it's really, I mean, is it everything for them that everything's intrinsically existent? I mean, there's no
Nothing.
1 inch of no thing where like, oh, maybe
Right,
certain things are like not intrinsically
Sure.
existent, right?
Yeah, I want to be like with you. Quran desigore ngwe ma dige yuse thamje ro wage ane temba du ranshi du bari la go resa yang chö ka she ro wage chö ka she ta di an temba du yena men to ba sai ne yo mar resa ngwe ma dige del chö thamje yuse kan gol temba du la go re yang chö ka she ta chi yena temba du bi ro chi se ne me ro la
저 담제 담바 저러 시고 이 말이 뭐 있나 대도 이소 저서 랑 생이 좋아디 이도 시고로 와
알 ngwe
뭐 간가 담바 저와 이시고로 와
tak ba de ma de so ro
다바도 랑 생이 좋아디 야 담바 저와 이시 말이
no so 어떻게 이제 temba du ba da si de konza se jam ro konza de ke yang ko ma ro ngo bo de kanga ro temba du bo res
요저로 요저와 담바 저와 이시고
la ta tak ba de ke de rangshing du ba temba du ma
요 저와리 담바 저와 말이 시고요
ngwe ma ba so ro
뭐 담바 저와 말을 그래서 딱 봐서 피해서 쉬어지를 봐. 딱 좋으지 뭐도 그런 노도 좀 Kawa professor Yomaraba.
Ale.
Oh, this is what.
That's the position. I said, I think part of this is like maybe we still, my footnote, need to understand deeply the schools of thought, because the realist school of thought, their position is, they don't say that all phenomena are truly existent. In their school of thought, they said all functional things, produced phenomena, right, are truly existent. So functional means things produced by causes and conditions, right? Anything created by causes and conditions they think is truly existent. Yeah? Now there are phenomena which are permanent, not created by causes and conditions. They said permanent things are, they don't say it's truly existent, but they say they are intrinsically existent. See, now we are getting into of that technicalities, right? Different. Because permanent things are just simply labeled onto something. They are not created by causes and conditions, right? And so they said the permanent things are not truly existent, but they are intrinsically existent, whereas the functional things, the things produced by causes and conditions, are truly existent.
So what is considered intrinsically existent for them? Because at least my understanding, if something is not intrinsically existent, it doesn't change, it doesn't move. But you're talking about something that gets produced, which means something did change. Production is change, right?
Right.
So.
But they will say everything is truly existent. Changes are truly existent.
Change is truly existent.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
They said, causes and conditions, dependence is there, but they accept dependent arising as truly existent there, right?
Okay.
And we use dependent arising as to disprove true existence, but for them, hey, things are truly existent, they're dependent arising, I tell you, right? So they throw the same reason back. That's my footnote, okay? I'm not speaking for Geshe, okay? It's my footnote. Yeah, that's it, yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, let me.
Well, first of all, we're all realists, more or less, right? I would say that regarding their being stuck, they're going to be unstuck as a result of hearing that. So we cannot say that it's a permanent state. Same with us. And as a result of accumulating, actually, they are unstuck if they hear that. As a result of accumulating merit. But it seems to me that actually this is not so difficult to understand, how if things are depending on cause and condition, not to understand but to accept that, then they are intrinsically existent. Because, for example, this table, it depends on the wood, on the carpet, and all that, which means that it's not a figment of my imagination. It's not merely imputation of my mind. It's there.
That's what they say, right?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense for us.
Right.
Yeah, if we don't investigate that, but it's very easy to fall into it. It's quite obvious.
That's
yeah.
right.
It's causes and conditions, therefore it truly exists.
That's the reason. You're right.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah. The Quran did this. Because Bana konzo ke tende ke ta ke temba du de ko wa ge we bi chok ro wa ge te ko se se ko bana ngam de chok de yo wa ge chok de temba du wer ka san chok de sing ge se re ko kang ba yo de ngam zo sem na nam da ma ro ko kang ba du ga ko sing du la yo ma ro ge sing no ne yo ro ge ta nga ra sam de ba ne konzo sam de yo ro ge temba du se de ko la ko chang ju dok do ye de ge ro ge de sam de ko ro ge de ta ngwe ma sam tang da ga ina temba du da de 그 쪽서 생인데 그 규제를 제베래 규제는 이제 그 내 누가 미직 나가 똑바 따져 말이야.
똑바 딱좀 차죠 뭐. 그 문에서 그 동시에 미기 통하다 그 야가 야로.
Yeah, that's right. The realists say, you know what, that's not something you just imagine it, right? You can touch it, you can break it, you can remake it. He said, so it exists, really there. That's what they say, you know. Yeah. Okay, so we'll stop there, have a lot of break. Sure. One more. Yeah.
He said, Geshe said about the illusory. Jerin Puche elucidated how the illusory body arises.
Yes.
But isn't also what about the mental body that bodhisattvas gain when they achieve the path of seeing? They gain a mental body. Isn't that the same as the illusory body?
Okay, sure. Yeah.
And do they have only that mental body?
Okay, sure. 코나 간디셔데 디르다기 갱 이카나인디 제르무치기 다 귤리 로바게 귤리가 세가 되는지 애니신도 차발롱도 귤리 루단데게 숨로바게 제르무치냐라 데데 숨게 마중 숨로바게 제 코나 시디오 간리야 청주 셈바 karso again tholam thobar wage yilu says to slowage yilu yilu so the yilu said it and again the karso cumulative the chikwa marvesa ge yilu said it a change some yilu top the ina change some kuli the yilu ma say lu shamba yomar ba khande res again the yilu
yilu sa de yilu chikwa samare yilu sa de gom de ade bu chik siwar thoda be ngoso chik da je gom se gom ni so samon no gom ya jor
먼저 떡에 쇠셔줘야 돼.
또 쇠셔지 어디다
자, 전주 서바게
사다 줄르사도 거 들어 또 쇠셔지 거 그러니
좀 거라.
신저 농다 디 신이
원래 당고
야 사바 차고로
라 차로로. 단디 전주 서바사 당고 톱들 가는 이야기 아니 일류디 삼례 당 맞아 거 일류 관한지
데 일류사도 this word 리뇨 짜고 말봐 그런
알래.
this word
아
그런 다 사모저 것도 가데스는 류
알류 가데네 디게로 체 삼례 남레 만드셔 거로 알레뉴 메다 노. Yeah. So Geshe says that in the mental body, yilu in Tibetan, and illusory body are not the same. Yeah. The mental body, if we relate to ourselves, like how we visualize ourselves as deities by mentally creating, that's a more like mental body. But the illusory body is not an imagination; it's a real. The subtlest wind energy will arise in an illusory form, right? It's not you have to imagine it, that one. But then what it means that for bodhisattvas on the path of seeing have mental body is that now they do not have to be reborn under the influence of the delusions of karma. They can choose, sort of, right? Mental body, they can whatever body they wanted to, sort of thing. No, I shouldn't say whatever. He didn't say that. Body they would like to have, they can reborn in that. They don't have to come under the influence of karma and delusions. The mental body, that sense, yeah. Okay, so thank you for keep your questions brimming in your minds, and I have some prayer requests. First, I'll request Geshe and then come back. Again, can you share this here again? Today, Sunday, the Karsora Ngegi Lero Kenlachi, the Narang Karsora, Luchongalas Lero, Kansan and Kazan Tongsoma, or they can to me, Moraming Stella thing to me, sir. Sapasan show choose a kebat once again. Ditch and then a Kazan Jagala Yaki, Amdabad, England, Dogan, number chin, Kamangali, Masane, me using a shit one. They Masane, Migi, Mengan, you such a guy, and me was a member, Lutu, the member was say, what? What to get it to my jump on. Then it said at them, trade tongue, trend tongue, trish tongue. So I have prayer requests for deceased, my very esteemed mentor and colleague friend, Stella Tingtumi. I worked with her for over 15 years, and she retired more recently, and then she succumbed to cancer. So she passed away Friday at 8 a.m. So I request prayer for her. And also in India, I think a flight took off from Ahmedabad. In 5 minutes, it just crashed, and all the 241 people plus it fell down on the medical college, and they killed a lot of people down there. So I know at least 290 people were killed. So please, and then any others we can think of. So we will do Avalokiteshvara prayer for all of them. Then for the living, I have prayer requests for 3 individuals here: Tre Tang, Trent Tang, Trish Tang. Prayers for their well-being and purification of obstacles. So we will do the Medicine Buddha prayer. So Avalokiteshvara first. Chadong Golun, Juben, Jebodon, Jendong, Gewa, Sangbe, Sangyedong, Kala, Kangde, Tela, Tedem. Jumba Chenre Sela Chanze to Omani Peme Hong Omani.
Omanim beme hori gawan di nyodo da chere sewan rubju dowa cheja malu de salam geba sho medicine Buddha. Toje gwenla nyombe jomden de senzang tebe ngendu dongye se duso ne se sangye menje la bindur yaye Shartse lo Tibetan bekaze ma bekaze ranza samugade so. Da bekaze ma bekaze ranza samugade so ha gawa de nyodo da membe gebu rubjo ne dowa chijam de salam geba sho. So we prayer booklet. Page 3. Lode Gyaltsen Yudon Bega de Gyaltsen Pongwe Chudo Memba Shen Tenban Zin La Wando Gij Danye Chogun Jola Sowa de page 5. Mawa Dame Gunjen Dongwan de Kari Jongzo Nyenda Senze Jamgun Yawa Nyewa Yabse Ji Tangson Tenze Mawe Shiba Tenzin Chebe Yingguan Zebe Ji Shije Nikun Changju Tendu Longda Damje Bebe Beyuan Ji Duja Gyaltsen Gundo Shabde Tesan Gondang Jeze Zombe Ji Yongzo Yure Tube Nyak Longrie Dejin Nebe Bedenba Tuden Kanri Tabo Shabde Dona Kongme Zeba Namda Gun Dendan Robe Pende Jobe Pendo Jumi Shebe Chinle Ji Kesan Duje Dendo Shabde Chizi Lame Tuje Melanda Kesan Duje Dendan Zame Chozon Dodo Chido Domba Chida Memben Dungu Lundu Sho. Page 9. Ranjan Shinge Gombo Seba Men Zodo Namje Kiyun Rama Sho Chozo Zeye Lazo Tamze Tade Mishi Choge Mudu Tubden Chedang Losan Gyawa Yi Shiru Tenban Zimbe Beyun Tade Duje Gyungwe Shinye Cho Yangdu Ninje Wongbo Shabde Jiden Songwe Chana Bemen Denbe Zawa Soso Tab Namda Tsudin Yangda Lamba Ye Losan Genden Bedo Shabde Tujo Gyaltsen Nunzin Yangbe Shin Sangjo Namje Sangjin Junbe Gongjon Shila Songjo Debe Denbe Mada Chenbo Shabde Chebe Dongwan Gowan Bojo De Zunbe Rilan Siyu Bamja Zunbe Dunden Leshe Zhangja Kejo Shinyin Chenbo Shabde Sho Kebe Langdo Gushe Zeta Zunbe Chara Nianzo Rangsa Ji Sangbe Duje Rikon Yishin Somden Shinyin Chen Tesan Rola Jawe Dende Ji Minjo Daju Zangme Sijin Lojen Zidin Tendu Beshawe Zenden Shinyin Chenbo Shabde Chozon Gyawa Seje Chenla Dang Toden Dangjin Songme Daja Lasan Dabe Denbe Du Jida Membe Du Lundu Shu Changju Simju Rinpo Che Maje Bana Ji Jewa Nyamba Meba Yang Gone Gondo Pewa Shu Doni Dawa Rinpo Che Maje Bana Meba Yang Gone Gondo Pewa Shu Sa Shi Beijing Jushi Medo Zhang Rira Linshi Ninde Yenba De Sangye Shendo Mede Viwa Logue Nanda Jinla Jeba Shu Kari Rawe Korwe Shinganzo Pendan Dewa Mali Jove Jenre Sewa Tenzin Gyaltsen Yi Shawe Sidi Ba Tengyo Ji Yidang Guru Radha Mande Niyanda ya me jawa kwendo yanda lama dan deme chege bela loji. Sada lamje yende razo ne doje change go ba nyodo.